I'm gonna wait to start the show for a minute.
Well, I certainly hope I'm live. Get this down a little bit.
Has anybody checked your pulse today?
Pulse. Where's my pulse?
Your pulse width modulation?
Oh, my pulse audio. Well, it's working.
That was tasty.
Now I'm way over here. Let's move it. That's a little better.
Write that down. 660 calories.
Yeah, I had my usual omelet today.
Omelet?
Omelet, yeah.
Oh,
2 eggs, a handful of shredded cheese, and some green salsa.
I started out the day with...
Don't need no salt, pepper, nothing. Just eat it.
I started out the day with French toast. And then I had a cheeseburger. Then I had an orange. And now I had some oatmeal.
Doing a cheeseburger in honor of the parrot heads.
No, I was just hungry.
Yeah, Jimmy Buffett died yesterday.
Yeah.
And Bill Richardson died yesterday. The former governor of New Mexico, and he was supposedly a front runner to be Obama's vice presidential nominee, but instead Obama just tapped him to do the introduction speech at the convention.
Gotcha.
And so he wound up being UN ambassador and a few other ambassadorships.
Okay.
Really good guy. Hi.
Do we want to
announce?
Okay. Oh wait, no. We got to do our. You know what? I don't have up.
What?
Audacity.
Well, that's a problem.
It is. Give me a second.
We don't have up as a show announcement.
And we also don't. We haven't done our 3s and our 2s and our 1s.
Well, that's after we get Audacity going, but that's also after we get the show announcement up.
Oh, well. Announce the show.
Joe.
What?
I don't know this stuff. You and Bill post the links.
Oh, hold on. I will post the link. We're streaming on the YouTubes, right?
The interwebs.
I'm streaming on YouTube. What a wonderful way to say how much I love Mint. I'm streaming on YouTube.
We're such
I do that a lot.
Professional production here.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Telegram. It's posted on Telegram. Now, Discord. Show announcements.
Okay, I'm going to copy that link. Go over to Bodhi and paste it there. All right.
Now, where did I put that Audacity? Test.
Here, Audacity. Here, boy.
Okay.
I have already updated the spreadsheet. Joe, you're at 123 shows as of today.
Cool.
That's 3rd place.
Cool.
But who's counting?
I am.
Moss is counting.
Yes. if Bill gets 7 more shows in, he'll catch up with Charles Olson, the founder of the show.
All right, Moss, over to you.
Over to me.
Yep.
I'm not running this show.
I know, but you're doing the 3s and the 2s and the 1s.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Where's my Audacity? There's my Audacity. All right. We got 3, 2, 1, record, going 3, 2, 1, record. Goodness, almost no traffic here. Okay, let's do our zeros. 3, 2, 1,
0.
0.
Close enough.
All right, minimize
Take it,
that.
Joe.
Over to me.
Mute your mic when you're not on.
Okay. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 420. This is episode 420.5, recorded on Sunday, September 3rd, 2023. Enjoying the cooler weather, I'm Joe.
Back from the swamps, I'm Moss.
And back on my feet, I'm Eric.
First up in the news, Mint Monthly News. August, new Asahi Linux Mac GPU beats Apple. GNOME improves Epiphany. Budgie 10.8 is out. Bodhi 7.0.0 is released. QEMU 8.1 released. LibreOffice gets a new number. Linux turns 32. Magia 9 released. Linux kernel 6.5 is out, and Firefox loses users. In security and privacy, nothing. We have nothing. Everything is perfectly private and secure now. Then in our wanderings, me and Moss return to the fold, and we welcome Eric Adams to join us.
Thank you.
In our innards section, we talk about Linux on mobile devices. And finally, the zero feedback and a couple of suggestions. First up in the news, Mint Monthly News, August. Clem posted the following on September 1st. You might be wondering what's coming next and in which order. As you know, we're planning 2 releases, LMDE 6 and Mint 21.2 Edge, but we also have long-term plans. One of these is to update our ISO production framework. Among other things, this fixes secure boot. This is a big task, but it's really important for us. We've been hesitating on how to prioritize these. What ended up happening was that we worked both on LMDE and the new ISO framework. We've been reducing the differences between old and new ISOs. We've even made a tool to compare them. We're now at a stage where we're pretty confident we'll move to the new framework, and we'll have secure boot support for upcoming images. LMDE 6 is almost ready to enter QA. It looks stable. It has all the changes featured in Mint 21.2, and it uses a Debian 12 base and a 6.1 kernel. It should use Pipewire by default. Also, though we haven't tested that yet, so I shouldn't really be talking about it. Both LMDE 6 and Mint 21.2 Edge will be released this month, September. Somebody want to take the next one?
Sure. New Asahi Linux Mac, new Asahi Linux Mac GPU drivers just did something even Apple couldn't manage. From a blog post by Alyssa Rosenweg, a developer on the Asahi graphics driver, August 22nd, 2023, conformant OpenGL ES 3.1 drivers are now available for M1 and M2 family GPUs. That means the drivers are compatible with any OpenGL ES 3.1 application. Interested? Just install Linux. For existing Asahi Linux users, upgrade your system with DNF Upgrade for Fedora or Pacman-SYU for Arch for the latest drivers. Our reverse-engineered, free, and open-source graphics drivers are the world's only conformant OpenGL ES 3.1 implementation for M1 and M2 family graphics hardware. That means our drivers pass tens of thousands of tests to demonstrate correctness and is now recognized by the industry. To become conformant, an implementation must pass the official conformance test suite designed to verify every feature in the specification. The test results are submitted to Kronos, the standards body. After a 30-day review period, if no issues are found, the implementation becomes conformant. The Kronos website lists all conformant implementations, including our drivers for the M1, M1 Pro, Max, Ultra, M2, and M2 Pro and Max. Sorry. Today's milestone isn't just about OpenGL ES. We're releasing the first conformant implementation of any graphics standards for the M1, and we don't plan to stop here. Unlike ours, the manufacturer's M1 drivers are unfortunately not conformant for any standard graphics API, whether Vulkan or OpenGL or OpenGL ES. That means that there is no guarantee that applications using the standards will work on your M1 or M2 if you're not using Linux. This isn't just a theoretical issue. Consider Vulkan, the third-party Molten VK layer, a subset of Vulkan on top of the proprietary drivers. However, those drivers lack key functionality, breaking valid Vulkan applications. That hinders development and users alike if they haven't yet switched their M1, M2 computers to Linux. Why did we pursue standards conformance when the manufacturer did not? Above all, our commitment to quality. We want our users to know that they can depend on our Linux drivers. We want standard software to run without M1 specific hacks or porting. We want to set the right example for the ecosystem. The way forward is implementing open standards conformant to the specifications without compromises for portability. We are not satisfied with proprietary drivers, proprietary APIs, and refusal to implement standards. The rest of the industry knows that progress comes from cross-vendor collaboration. We know it too. Achieving conformance is a win for our community, for open source, and for open graphics. Of course, we have minimal funding. It's a little awkward that we beat the big corporation. It's not too late, though. They should follow our lead.
That's kind of cool. That makes me more interested in maybe, falling into a Mac one day.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd like to see Asahi get done. While their graphics driver is up to standards, I haven't heard yet that their entire distro is up to Linux standards.
And it just is interesting to me because I always hear about how, Linux is the little guy and, but when you think of something like this where there were no standards published, there was no information published, and they essentially had to reverse engineer, and not only have they done that, they've done it better. And I think that's pretty amazing. So yeah, they're not 100% complete, but this is really encouraging.
Oh yeah. Next up, GNOME 44.4 is out to improve Epiphany and more. From 9 to 5 Linux, the GNOME project announced today the general availability of GNOME 44.4 as the fourth maintenance update to the latest GNOME 44 Kuala Lumpur desktop environment series. While GNOME 44.3 was skipped for some reason, GNOME 44.4 only brings a few changes to the Epiphany GNOME web browser, such as hiding of the search the web for context menu by default in the web app mode. Several bugs were also addressed in Epiphany, which was updated to version 44.6. These include the broken save password permission requests, unencoded percent characters in URLs which prevented the session from being saved, web views not being destroyed when the window is closed, and a crash. GNOME 44.4 also improves the GNOME software app by disabling animations in the UI according to the user's accessibility settings, fixing the ability to apply updates that require some packages to to be removed to satisfy dependencies and improving error notifications from failed GPG checks. Since GNOME 44.3 was missing in action, this release apparently includes a GNOME Shell 44.3 with a fix for cursor offset when using a magnifier, a fix for missing workspace borders after wallpaper changes, and a revert of previous screencast optimizations due to bogus windows. The same goes for Mutter 44.3, which fixes the dynamic max render time blocking with direct scan-out, adds the ability to avoid rapidly toggling the dynamic max render time, and ensures the preferred monitor mode is always included. XDG Desktop Portal GNOME 44.2 is included as well in GNOME 44.4 with a single change, namely the ability to expose the settings backend when running outside the GNOME desktop environment, which means better compatibility with other desktops like Cinnamon or XFCE. For more details about the changes included in this update, check out the release announcement. Meanwhile, if you're using the GNOME 44 desktop environment series, keep an eye on your distro's stable repositories for the GNOME 44.4 packages and update as soon as possible. It'd be nice if they could get the Epiphany browser up to standards, since it's one of the two main browsers, three if you count Safari, that do not use Blink.
I know nothing.
It's a tough road to hoe there. I mean, that is definitely not an easy task, but I agree with you. It's always better to have more options than less.
Okay. Budgie 10.8 desktop release, new trash applet, menu improvements. Joshua Strobel announced today the release of Budgie 10.8 as a new maintenance update, bringing various improvements, bug fixes, and other changes. Budgie 10.8 comes with a new applet called Budgie Trash Applet that was previously available as a third-party applet. But not it comes pre-installed by default with the new Budgie release. But now,
I think that's a now.
Now it comes pre-installed by default with a new Budgie release. Apart from the usual functionality of such an applet, the Budgie Trash Applet also features support for restoring trashed files. Another interesting change in Budgie 10.8 is support for the status notifier specification in the System Tray applet, which enables applications to show their icons and menus in the System Tray area in a modern way that is expected from a desktop environment in 2023. The Budgie menu applet has been updated as well in this release to reorganize some of the default apps and categories based on user feedback. For example, the utilities category has been removed entirely, and the items were moved to the system tools category. Budgie 10.8 also updates the battery indicator in the status applet to give users the ability to control balanced performance and power saver profile modes. On supported systems, improves the privilege escalation dialog with a description of the requested action and adds support for Magpie version 0.x. This version of Magpie is less than 1 and is designed to be a temporary fork catered to Budgie and its current X11 only support, said Joshua Strobel. Magpie version 0.9.x is strictly for X11 support and is a fork of the Mutter from GNOME 43.x. With that in mind, Josh also stated that the Budgie team is working on Wayland support for future Budgie releases, which will be implemented with the Magpie 1.0 as their in-house built Wayland compositor created on top of WL Roots. Check out the blog announcement for details about the bug fixes and minor refinements that landed in Budgie 10.8, a release that will soon be available for users of various popular GNU Linux distributions, including Arch Linux, Fedora Linux, Ubuntu Budgie, OpenSUSE, Tumbleweed, and others.
Sounds good if you like Budgie.
I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah, it's nice that they are moving toward Wayland. I know that the next article will have nothing to say about Wayland because they're not working on that yet.
Yeah. Well, when is Clem going to start looking at Wayland? Is Clem going to start looking at Wayland?
The answer is yes when he has to.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Anyhow. Bodhi Linux 7.0.0 is released. This is a favorite of mine from bodhilinux.com blog. The Bodhi team is thrilled to announce the long-awaited release of Bodhi Linux 7.0. Built on the Ubuntu 22.04 LTS Jammy Jellyfish base, Bodhi 7.0 is a momentous step forward. With a strong commitment to improving user experience, performance, and adhering to its core values of minimalism and customization, this release marks a significant milestone in the evolution of Bodhi Linux. Comes the standard release with a 5.15 kernel, an HWE release featuring the 6.2 Ubuntu HWE kernel, and an S76 release featuring the 6.4.4 System 76 kernel. We will be releasing an app pack ISO in a few weeks. That's the same thing, only with a lot more applications, as well as starting work on a Debian-based 32-bit legacy version of Bodhi 7.0. Bodhi 7.0 comes with an array of improvements and updates. Most notable are introduction of the new S76 release, which features a more advanced kernel for those seeking cutting-edge performance. Kernel updates are now enabled by default. EFL and terminology are updated to the version in eGit. Moksha no longer relies on deprecated libraries. The BL7 login screen boasts an upgraded slick greeter with a password reveal feature, version 1.8.1, complemented by a new Plymouth theme. The default theme has been changed to the Moksha Green theme, showcasing an animated background, refreshed splash screen, and numerous fine-tunings. Bodhi's Quick Start Guide is now available in multiple languages, inviting collaboration for unsupported languages. Thunar's Archive plugin now comes pre-installed and utilizing the Ngrampa backend. A web browser manager inspired by the classic Zorin OS browser manager simplifies the installation of popular web browsers. Moksha introduces a key bindings viewer for fundamental shortcuts conveniently accessible from the menu. The iBar module now supports application instances, enhancing user organization. The notification module has been entirely restructured, offering support for notification actions. For a comprehensive list of changes, please refer to the detailed release notes. Bodhi Linux has always thrived due to its vibrant and supportive community. With the unveiling of version 7.0, this spirit of camaraderie has reached new heights. A dedicated support network, vibrant forums, and a comprehensive documentation ensure users of all skill levels receive the guidance and assistance they require. Bodhi Linux 7.0 enters the scene with a fresh perspective on what a Linux distribution can achieve. The amalgamation of visual appeal, heightened performance, and commitment to user personalization positions Bodhi 7.0 as an enticing option for both newcomers and seasoned Linux enthusiasts. Whether you seek a refined desktop environment or a lightweight and efficient operating system, Bodhi 7.0 is a release that warrants exploration. Our heartfelt appreciation goes to Stefan Uram for his exceptional contributions to code, themes, and icons, which are integral to Bodhi's identity. Many thanks to Ryan Byrne for doing the preliminary work on porting the web browser manager to GTK. We also extend our gratitude to our dedicated translation team, who went above and beyond to localize the Quick Start Guide. Special recognition goes to Ihar Areshchan. Come on, I practiced that. Ihar Areshchankau for his dual role in translating and for providing the concept and code to support localized Quick Start guides.
I'm glad it was you saying that name and not me. I'd have torn that up.
By the way, Stefan's is watching the stream, so hello, Stefan.
Yeah, I posted the link to Bodhi Discord just to make sure he could show up.
Yeah, and he just said thank you for the Bodhi promo.
He is a great guy, and I have converse with him most days.
Also, Majid is here from the hospital.
Oh. Well, you should hop on and join us or something. Anyhow, yeah, everyone knows I use Bodhi. I have been screaming about Bodhi for years and years. I am technically on the team, but I don't do anything except talk about it.
That's important.
And donate. I am the sole regular donor to the project, and I wish to change that soon.
Yeah, I agree.
Eric, I know you've tried it.
I have. Yeah, I took a look at it, and I've tried it several times over the years, and I just have always appreciated that it is different enough to be just exceptionally interesting, but still completely functional in every way and lightweight and, visually appealing. And it's a really wonderful thing that I hope persists for many, many years to come. And yeah, I agree with you. It's criminal that they don't have more exposure and more backers, and hopefully that does change.
Hopefully we'll get 8,000 listeners to this episode and they'll all go download Bodhi.
That would be wonderful. All right, next up we have QEMU 8.1 released with new Pipewire audio backend and many CPU improvements from Phoronix. QEMU 8.1 is now available with the latest feature update to this important piece of the open source Linux virtualization stack. It brings a number of new features, including a new x86 CPU model of Intel Granite Rapids. The tiny code generator now supports RDPID instruction. AES instructions can use AES acceleration on the host processor, and other new features exposed. A wide variety of RISC-V architecture improvements, from supporting BF16 extensions to the ZFA extension, ZCM star extensions, and many others. The Ventana Veyron V1 CPU also has been added, plus many other RISC-V fixes. Support for long arch LSX extensions and various fixes for this CPU architecture. KVM VMs on a host with support for the memory tagging extension MTE can now use MTE within the guests. Adding the new CPU type of Cortex Neoverse V1, Neoverse-V1. Separately, on the ARM side, there is also a new Banana Pi BPI M2 Ultra, the BPI M2U board model. A new VirtIO multi-touch PCI input device was added as a multi-touch capable input device. Improved E1000E and IGB Intel network device emulation. Shadow VirtQ offload support for the vHost VDPA interface. A new Pipewire-based audio backend for QEMU. Support for multi-touch events with the GTK interface. More details on the dozens of QEMU 8.1 feature changes, visit the QEMU wiki. QEMU 8.1 can be downloaded from qemu.org.
Okay. LibreOffice changes its stripes, or numbers. From Phoronix, one nugget of information in the LibreOffice 7.6 release announcement for those who missed it and deserves calling out specifically. Succeeding LibreOffice 7.6 will not be 7.7 or 8.0, but rather version 24.2. LibreOffice developers are moving to a year-month-based versioning system, thus the next release in their 6-month-based release cadence will be LibreOffice 24.2 and in turn LibreOffice 24.8, 25.2, 25.8, 26.2, etc. Due to the maturity of the LibreOffice codebase, the current versioning system isn't really reflective of major changes and in turn can be hard to genuinely justify bumping the significant version number. By switching to a calendar-based numbering system, it's now decoupled from features or not of that release. There were some internal discussions whether it should move to, say, LibreOffice 2024.2, but in the end they decided for a month-based scheme. There were also discussions whether to just always increase the major version number each new release as Firefox and Google Chrome do now, but that too was decided against. So next February, look forward to LibreOffice 24.2. Interesting.
Makes some sense. You can just look at your version number and tell how out of date you are. All right, Linux turns 32. I'm choking on something here. On August 26th, 1991, there was a post on comp.os.minix. What would you most like to see in Minix? Read that wrong anyhow. What would you like to see most in Minix? And this post is from one Linus Benedict Torvalds. Hello, everybody out there using Minix. I'm doing a free operating system, just a hobby, won't be big and professional like GNU, for 386, 486 AT clones. This has been brewing since April and is starting to get ready. I'd like any feedback on things people like/dislike in Minix, as my OS resembles it somewhat. Same physical layout of the file system due to practical reasons, among other things. I have currently ported Bash 1.08 and GCC 1.40, and things seem to work. This implies that I'll get something practical within a few months, and I'd like to know what features most people would want. Any suggestions are welcome, but I won't promise I'll implement them. Smiley face. Signed, Linus, which is Torvalds at kruna.helsinki.fi. P.S. Yes, it's free of any Minix code, and it has a multi-threaded file system. It is not portable, uses 386 task switching, etc., and it probably never will support anything other than AT hard disks, as that's all I have. And a frowny face. And yes, he spelled portable wrong. Any comments on that? Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Linux.
Happy birthday, and thank you, Linus.
Okay, next up, Mageia 9 officially released with Linux 6.4, smaller disk footprint, and more. From 9 to 5 Linux, the Mageia 9 GNU Linux distribution has been officially released today as a major update to this Mandriva Linux-derived distro for the masses that introduces newer technologies, new features, and many improvements. Powered by the Linux 6.4 kernel series, Mageia 9 is here with a smaller disk footprint for minimal installations when disabling the recommended packages, adoption of SQLite for the RPM database for faster package management, and Z-standard compression for the Stage 1 images. This release also drops the 15 years old forked NFS code for NFS support, which is now done using system tools, lets you specify a port different than 80 when using an HTTP server, switches curl instead of GNU wget for downloading packages during the installation, and enables the Network Manager system service by default in the KDE Plasma Live ISO. Quote, this allows network connections to be managed via the Plasma System Settings tool as well as by the traditional Mageia network management tools, end quote, said the devs. Hardware support has been enhanced in Mageia 9 as it uses the Mesa 23.1 graphics stack, a kernel Linus flavor with vanilla stock kernel and without any extra patch set, support for the latest NVIDIA proprietary drivers in the non-free repositories, out-of-the-box support for Prime GPU offloading and the Nouveau drivers, and a new tool called Mageia Prime to configure NVIDIA Prime on supported systems. Mageia 9 also supports both Pulse Audio and Pipewire as sound servers, but it still defaults to Pulse Audio. Those who want to use Pipewire can switch from Pulse Audio through the Mageia Control Center. Mageia's default desktop environment was always KDE Plasma, which has been updated to Plasma 5.27.5 and accompanied by the KDE Frameworks 5.105 and KDE Gear 23.04.1 software suites. Other supported desktops include GNOME 44.2, XFCE 4.18, LXQT 1.3.0, Mate 1.26.0, and Cinnamon 5.6. For more details about all the updated packages in Mageia 9 and other information, check out the release notes. Meanwhile, you can download the live and installation images from the official website.
You want this one, Joe, and I'll do Firefox?
Yeah, if you want to switch, that's fine.
Oh, I didn't see it tagged. He took two in a row. That's why I wasn't sure.
Right. Yeah. If you want me to do this one and you can do the Firefox one, that's fine. Linux 6.5 kernel release. This is from Phoronix. While at the start of Linux 6.5 cycle, Linus Torvalds was concerned this release may be one of those releases that may drag out. In the end, it is releasing today and right on schedule. Linux 6.5 was just published rather than going into overtime without any extra release candidate. Linux 6.5 has many features from the AMD pstate EPP driver default rather than the ACPI CPU Freak for Zen 2 and the newer supported AMD Ryzen systems initial USB 4 v2 enablement. initial MIDI 2.0 kernel driver, more Intel hybrid CPU tuning, and a whole lot more. See the Linux 6.5 feature list to learn more about all the great changes in this end of summer 2023 kernel debut. In this final week of Linux 6.5 development since 6.5 RC7, there was a performance regression fix and a variety of mostly small bug fixes, with nothing overly scarring coming up. Linus decided to go ahead and release Linux 6.5 stable. Now it's onward to the Linux 6.6 cycle with many features to look out for with what will be an autumn 2023 kernel release. The timing now of the Linux 6.6 merge window for the next 2 weeks will mean that it runs through the US Labor Day holiday when a number of kernel developers may be taking time off for holiday. Well, that sounds like a nice release.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just keeps marching forward. It's amazing, all of the people and all of the code contributions and all of that comes together into our wonderful Linux kernel. All right. Firefox has lost around 70 million users in the last 5 years. Makes me just a little bit sad. From FOSS-Post via Londoner, as of August 2023, the number of active Firefox users around the world has dropped to 176 million users, a far cry from the end of 2018 when it had 244 million active users. This means that Firefox browser has roughly lost 70 million active users in the last 5 years. All of these statistics are taken from the Firefox Public Data Report, which is the official source provided by Mozilla for reporting various user-based data. Why it matters. Firefox is the only open source browser in the market that uses its own rendering engine called Gecko and does not build upon Google's Chromium browser and its engine. This is important because it means that Firefox is the only player outside Google's reach and its monopoly. Other browsers like Brave, Microsoft Edge, Vivaldi, etc. are all based on Chromium, effectively making them vulnerable to whatever decisions are taken by Google to enhance its product position on the web. But since Firefox is independent of Google, a free and open source alternative remains the only uncaged voice on the web. However, its users are switching from Firefox to other browsers, then this could cause web developers to ignore the browser in favor of the 85% user base browser engine that is controlled by Google, and not optimize their websites to render properly in Firefox, which could cause an even further acceleration in user migration, effectively strengthening Google's grasp on the web. Further context, as of August 2023, Firefox controls only around 6% of the browser market share according to StatCounter. But in August 2022, the browser had a market share of 7.39%, meaning that indeed it has lost 20% of its user base just in 1 year. This is a huge drop in the number of users in a very short period. It probably means that the users are ditching Firefox for other web browsers en masse for reasons like compatibility and speed.
There is one error there that only has to do with Mac users in that the Safari browser also does not use Chromium, but Safari has not been created for Windows or Linux for a good number of years now.
True.
I keep getting told to switch to Chromium something. I've tried Vivaldi. It's not working for me. I've tried using Chromium today because the show notes work better in Chromium, and supposedly Video Ninja does, but today it didn't. I keep going back to Firefox. I don't care that if some website doesn't load, then I'm not supposed to see that website.
I use Firefox 99% of the time, but I do use Vivaldi for some things. I use Edge for some things. I use Chromium. Brave is really the only one that I don't necessarily like, and a lot of that just has to do with the weird sort of crypto stuff that they do. But I do think Firefox falls behind. It is not as fast, and I think that people legitimately just say, I'm going to go with the better option.
Well, the main thing is that Google has used their command of the market to be able to avoid using W3C standards, whereas Firefox is still completely W3C compliant.
Yeah, the only thing I use Firefox for is, well, streaming the show. That's it.
Yeah. I build websites and I do most of my work in Firefox because it is web standards compliant. I test in all the other browsers just to make sure. And most of the time, there's not a problem. Sometimes there's really some very minor things. It's not like I have breaking problems. A lot of times it's just formatting and layout issues. So, and it does usually sort of make me a little upset whenever I go to a website that says, "Oh, we noticed you're not using Chrome. You should switch to Chrome because it's the better browser." And I think, well, let me just continue here, or I'll spoof your user agent. And hey, look at that! It works perfectly fine. The simple truth is that developers and marketing firms and companies that are building websites just don't want to put in the effort to do testing so that they can certify that it actually works.
You should make your websites all break when anybody with Chrome uses them.
Well, as much as that would feel like vindication, it would also be cutting off my nose to spite my face.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd probably cost you some work.
Well, also, 85% of the web would not be able to see your website.
Well, you just have it pop up, go get Firefox and come back.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to security and privacy.
Do we just sit here for 10 minutes and say nothing?
No. I'm just going to say everything in the world is secure and private now. No more concerns.
Yay!
And if you believe that, I have some beachfront property in Arizona I'll sell you.
I've got a bridge in New York.
All right, moving on to the bi-weekly wanderings. And it looks like I'm up first. And I wrote a lot, but I don't think it'll take me real long. Okay, I missed the last show, so I have a couple of interesting things to talk about. My son got his first actual phone for attending his new school. We have him open enrolled to a school for which we have to take him back and forth due to the problems that we have with our own school district. I was able to add him to my plan for a really good price and get him a free phone, the Motorola Edge. It's a decent phone, but the problem got to be that it was not going to show up for a few days until after school started, so I ended up loaning him my N200, the OnePlus Nord N200. He fell in love with the phone and does not want to give it back. This is the phone that I used for running Oct4A. So I attempted to use the Edge to run Oct4A, but it turns out that there's a known issue and it simply will not run on Motorola devices. So what I ended up doing is pulling out an old S7, which will run Oct4A, and I got an OTG cable for it, but it turns out that there's an issue with the older Samsungs and that they will not charge through the charging port while hooked up to OTG. So I had one of those split cables that allows you to hook up power to it, but evidently that only sends power to the peripheral device that you have hooked up. It won't send it to the phone. I fixed this using a wireless charger. I also found out that I cannot use the camera on the S7 for streaming so I can see the print because it causes it to overheat while also running the server. So the wireless charger on the desktop is just fine. I may build a mount with the wireless charger in it anyway so that it's not sitting on the desk, so that way it's still sitting upright. This might also allow for some more airflow and cooling, but I still don't think that it's going to be able to run the camera at the same time it's running Oct4A and charging using wireless charging, because here in this Texas heat, sometimes it still heats up to the point where it refuses to charge.
Joe, what is Oct4A?
Oct4A, well, I've talked about it on the show before. It's basically Octopi, but on a phone. So Octopi for Android. It's what controls my 3D printer. As for my 3D printer, last time I was on the show, I was discussing how it was not printing, and I was thinking that it was an issue with the fan. Turns out that is not the case. It was suffering from heat creep and clogging the PTFE tubing, but the cause is the extreme weather in Texas. I should have thought about it. You know, the glass temperature of what happened? The glass temperature of PLA is 120 degrees, and when it's 116 degrees in Texas, that gets to be a bit of a problem. So, yeah, it didn't take much heat creep to cause a clog. Now, we had a couple of days where it stayed in the 80s instead of being over 100, so I tried printing again, and things started coming out well. Printed a couple of small things like another murder bunny for JoJo, and some large things like new D handles for weightlifting. Just add some 550 quarter nylon and it's good to go. But then on the third day, I knew the temperature was going to be back up to crazy heights again, but I did continue printing and proved my theory that there was an issue with the ambient temperature. Also, with some of the cooler days, I have tested out some long prints with the S7 and it seems to work well. I'm currently printing a hanging lamp, which has about 24 hours worth of parts to print. And I'm also printing out a skull candy bowl, which will take up most of the volume of the printer. I hope I have enough filament, but I might have to switch to an orange for the skull candy bowl. Now, in trying to design and print a better handle for one of my large water bottles, several designs in, and sure enough, with the ambient temperature got to be 105, the thing clogged and started printing in midair again. And it has started cooling down, but currently I'm trying to print that lamp for my wife, so yeah. Moving on from there, it has been hot in Texas. So I had a couple of builds and fixes that are not in my normal range. I built a swamp cooler. This sounds odd, but it's actually, not a difficult build, and it's one I have done before. I have a squirrel cage fan in a 5-gallon bucket with a lid. What I did in the past, I used a bucket that the cat litter comes in, and I think the shape of that one is a little bit better for the overall build because it, funnels the air in the correct direction. But you cut a hole in the top for the blower portion of the fan to go into, and then you cut a hole of equal or slightly lesser size high up on the side. You also fasten a cloth over the hole and let it drape down to the bottom. You can also get a submerged water pump and run a line up to the top of the cloth so that it stays wet, but I haven't done that part yet. This type of cooler works much better in dry climates, but it's still good. Also, it is a very similar design to an air filter so that I can cut down on particulates in the garage. Also, you need to fill the bucket with water and preferably ice, preferably as close to the hole in the side of the bucket as possible. Ice will greatly help with the cooling, but it will melt quickly. I'm going to get some Gatorade bottles because they're a little bit thicker and fill them with water and freeze them so I don't have to keep buying bags of ice. Or get an ice maker, one of the two. Work has been interesting the past couple of weeks and has taken up a considerable amount of my time again. I don't want to get into all the details, but I have spent a lot of time on the command line every day trying to get one thing accomplished, and it seems like there is always more left to do. I have loved that part of it, but I'm not crazy of the time frame and the zero access that I actually have on the server. Both of the tires on my wife's van were showing steel bands, like out of nowhere, just one day to the next. So they needed to be replaced. It turns out that most manufacturers no longer make the R16s that it uses, and the cost was nearly double what we were expecting for 2 tires. This means that it's probably time to replace the van, but we're going to have to wait until, car prices come back down. But
wishful thinking.
Right. I know, that's absolutely insane that used car prices would come back down. Now,
hey, the new car is the cheapest car on the market is $20,000.
It's nuts. It's insane.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Now, just to look and see, because I was curious, at my local micro center, they now have Pi Zero Ws back in stock for $10 a piece. I didn't see any W-2s, but I did see the W's, and $10 a piece. That's still pretty darn good. Which doesn't mean much for me right now, but does give me some hope for future projects. They still did not have any 4s in stock either. I also worked on my pile of broken LG HBSs, which was starting, to get a little big. I was able to get a couple fixed, and I had a couple more that I took out of the backup pile because a couple of the ones that I worked on, for ones that I had been using regularly, the plastic just started crumbling when I took them apart. Makes me wonder if I could use the boards off of them and 3D print a new casing for them. That would be some very precise design work, though. I may give it a try, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that built well enough to do that. And really, that's all I've been up to. I actually got the hanging lamp portion in the mail during the show, so I still got 2 more prints on that. I think the one is 6 hours, and I had to split up the other one into a couple of more parts. So probably more than that 24 hours worth of printing that I was thinking about. Moss.
Okay, we lost Eric during that, and I think he probably had to start a new Audacity. And so we probably need to do a new 3210 to make sure we're in sync.
What doesn't make sense to me is the AUP project that I saved is 410 megabytes. So the data should be there, but whenever I said recover, there's nothing. So
Wonderful.
I don't.
We'll be able to.
Wait a minute.
Well, start it up again and let's just get a second file, and we need to do a 0 again.
Let me see. Oh wait, no, it did save it.
Still,
Thank you,
do
Audacity.
need a second file since there's a gap now.
Oh my goodness! Yep. Thank you, Audacity. Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeehaw! I'm going to export this right now, just because. Do we do?
Just save it to the end and just start a new file.
What do we usually save for upload, though? What style?
FLAC
and full
mono.
Everything.
Mono.
16.
Highest quality, everything. Yeah.
Level 8.
Yep.
Bit depth 16.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to do. Okay. It must have taken a minute for it to recover because at first it didn't show any audio.
Well, it was 400 and something megabytes.
Freaking out.
It'll probably save it a lot less.
So do we have a new Audacity going?
I'm doing it right now. Save project as. And we're going to say _2.
EP 420 A dash Eric.
Right. Come on, you.
I didn't do it. I hope all of our wonderful people watching the show are being entertained as Joe is waving a cable around in a bag.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I am now an even bigger fan of Audacity than I was at the beginning of the show.
Well, a lot of people are talking
there
about
have
us
been
moving
issues
away from
with
Audacity.
it lately. Yeah, there have been issues lately. I actually do have Tenacity installed. I haven't tried it yet.
That's a fork, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to... How do you want me to start my recording here?
Just start the recording, and then we'll do a 3210.
We'll do a new sync so we can sync it all up in post.
All right.
And then when you save it, that'll be B.
Oh, I'm having that same thing that you guys were talking about. I don't have a scroll bar, so I can't actually... Hang on one sec. I can't tell if it's recording. Okay, Audacity, now that I've been nice to you.
Yeah, I actually went and removed the flat pack and went back to the repo version, 2.4.2.
Yeah, I'm not using any of that stuff anyway. The real time, anything like that. All right. Am I recording?
Of course not.
I mean, it says it is, but I don't see it on the screen, which is just kind of freaking
then
me
maybe
out.
you've got the wrong mic selected.
No. It's not that. It's counting up.
Well, it should show you a waveform.
Yeah, it's not, and that's what's freaking me out. All right, give me one more chance here. Get this up. I'm just gonna do a whole new project.
We thank our watchers for their patience. All this is going to get cut out before we publish the episode.
Why would we do that?
To make it look like we might be professional podcasters.
When did that happen?
Nah.
Oh, when we started taking ads. This episode is brought to you by Bodhi.
Oh, are we getting paid for the ads?
All right. Here we go.
Oh.
Then we're not
Now I
professionals.
can see it.
Oh.
Professionals get paid.
I'll make sure a penny shows up in your PayPal account.
Mm-hmm.
Like
put it on my Ko-fi.
I should put enough money in your PayPal account so you can send that
I know, right?
EBXYA to Dale.
You know what? I had plans to do it this month, and then $300 for tires.
Yeah, we need tires for the back on our cruise as well. When they had them in stock, we didn't exactly need them yet, and then as soon as we decided, well, we might as well go ahead, they didn't have them anymore. And
well, let me see where I'm at after the 6th when the electric bill comes out, because that one always kills me.
Are we ready, Eric?
I'm good. If we want to do the 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Yeah,
3, 2, 1.
0.
That was probably the shakiest 0 we've ever had, but we're good to go. Let me go on. It's my turn.
It is.
I too missed the last show. I was off in the wilds of South Carolina sharing my music with a room full of other singers and listeners. I had a wonderful time, but it exhausted me so much, the long drive each way and the effort of performing, that I wound up having to take the next week off work. There were only a few calls anyhow, so I didn't miss much. We needed to get our cruise repaired as it started showing a code that the turbocharger was acting up on our way back from South Carolina. It took more than a week to get it fixed and over $500, but the cause and repair were both illuminating. It seems someone, before we bought the car, glued the valve cover on with lots and lots of silicone sealant. Accidentally, we hope, covering the PCV valve. This caused oil to leak into the turbocharger from the vacuum mess. Big mess, but the only part that was needed was a new valve cover. They had to break the valve cover to get it off with all that silicone. And it was a plastic valve cover, if you can believe that. I'm back to work at last. I subbed for the band and choir teacher last Monday and the health sciences instructor this past Friday. We had a fine episode of Distro Hoppers Digest with myself, Dale, and Eric. We finally got a full review of Blend OS in. I'm getting ready for the next episode. I'll be reviewing Linux Lite 4.4. The show is going so well that we dragged our newest co-host in for mintCast today. Take it away, Eric.
Yes, this is my first, although something tells me not my last weekly or bi-weekly report. Being a part of Distro Hoppers Digest has led me here to mintCast, although truth be told, I was already a fan of the show, and it was only a matter of time before I joined in. I was having a lot of those one-way conversations that you find yourself having in the car, maybe or maybe not disagreeing. But
you wouldn't disagree with me, Eric.
Never. So that was mostly Majid. Anyway,
or
so
Joe.
Or Joe. Well, of course, Joe. I mean, I didn't even have to say Joe, but
everybody should disagree with Joe. He's a very disagreeable person.
So I've heard. I wanted to experience that for myself, so here I am. As Moss mentioned, I participated in the latest edition of Distro Hoppers Digest, in which I reviewed Pop OS 2204. They have some very interesting ideas and have made a lot of changes to GNOME to suit their needs. I can see how this is perilous, though, since GNOME tends to make breaking changes and new releases that causes problems for extensions developers. Any distro relying on extensions is at risk of needing to regularly fix them as a new version of GNOME is released. Maybe that was one of the driving forces for System 76 to create their Cosmic desktop as an alternative to using GNOME. Cosmic appears to contain all of the features provided by their extensions and then some. And I hope they're successful in creating a compelling Linux desktop environment. I really, really did enjoy using it, and I'm curious to see what they can do, not being based on GNOME itself. I've been testing some Linux distributions because that's just what I do as a hobby. I looked at Rhino Linux, Bodhi 7, the latest release of Debian, Bunsen Labs, BlendOS, Magia 9, and Seduction. Many of these were cursory reviews. I tend to just fire up a virtual machine and spend an hour or so kicking the tires. But sometimes it leads past that, and then I get really sort of engrossed in something, and to the point where sometimes it ends up on hardware, and that's when I have actually found some really interesting distros and actually some surprises. Often, and I try to give everything a chance because I've found that certain things have been a surprise to me. Things that I thought I wouldn't like that I ended up did liking. So that's one of the fun things about distro hopping, is that you might find something that surprises you. And outside of my Linux pursuits, I have been recovering from hip replacement surgery almost 3 weeks ago, and things have progressed very well, much better than I had expected. I'm back on my feet and feeling nearly normal, actually even better since the pain I had before surgery is now gone. And it's really at this point just recovering from the surgery itself and a little bit of soreness, and hopefully that'll be going soon too.
Yay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, if no more commentary, then we can move on to the Linux Center. It's probably good that the bi-weekly was fairly short, because the last time I had scrolled through the innards was like early yesterday, and I see that they grew a lot. I was planning on a much more like free-form style thing, but I'm not sure how much I'm going to have to jump in here. On my favorite topic, considering how much there is here. I blame you,
Yeah.
Eric. It's all your
I
fault.
did suggest taking the AOSP at the end and putting it on next episode, but nobody seemed to buy that.
Well, let's see where we end up here, because when you said it, I don't think the notes were quite as robust as they they are right now. I had started this off last week on the pre-show stream where we were just sort of talking, and they had asked if I wanted to take part and participate, and I just said, yeah, I'm interested. And they said, well, okay, well, what do you want to talk about? Put me on the spot. And something that had been on my mind is the idea of, I mean, I guess the right word for it is convergence, but the idea that you could have a mobile device that is powerful enough to run an actual operating system. And by that, I mean not just, the standard fare of Android and iOS. And the reason for that, I've some specific needs. What I really want is a tablet device. And by that, I mean like literally a tablet that I can just hold the screen and have, strong touch features, and everything sort of just works. And using it that way would really be light web browsing, media consumption, basic stuff that you do with a tablet. The stuff that mobile operating systems actually do fairly well, right? Full screen, all of that stuff. But the problem in the part where they fall down is that I'd also like to be able to do some modest productivity work. I'm not talking like compiling things or, encoding video. Like I'm really just looking at, I would like to have a desktop class browser so that I'd be able to work on websites and, look at developer options and have developer tools available, and that sort of stuff that mobile browsers just don't really let you do, or at least do as well. And so Android, iOS, they don't do a really good job of that. So something I tried a few years ago was I got a Lenovo Duet Chromebook OS tablet, which is basically a tablet with a detachable keyboard. And it has Chrome OS on it, obviously. And Chrome OS actually was fairly compelling in that it had a full Chrome browser, which was, that tick that box, but the hardware was just abysmal. It was so slow and just nearly unusable, to the point where I really only had it for a few weeks, and I just gave up and took it back because it was just so bad. Um,
You know,
I've had. Go ahead, Joe.
I really feel like we've had most of the stuff that you wanted in a mobile format, but you're going to be surprised when I say this. We kind of lost it after Windows Mobile 6.5 because before Windows Mobile 7 and Windows Mobile 8, you had this huge library of different applications made by users that go all the way back to the first iteration of Windows Mobile. And Windows Mobile, depending on the desktop you chose, could look exactly like a desktop experience. Now, granted, it was really limited by the hardware that it was on, in that usually you didn't have a video output. You were usually dealing with like a 4.5-inch screen on like the Dell Axum X51V or similar ones of that size. But I mean, I remember having one, and the amount of things that you could do on it with the large library of applications that were there was absolutely insane.
It seemed like for a while there, convergence and the idea that you'd want a device that was more capable than just a phone or a tablet. It did seem like that was a thing for a while,
In the
and I
PDA
don't
market,
know.
though.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not entirely sure what happened. Like, I just when I went looking for
Purism
devices,
happened.
purism.
Uh,
Oh, I don't know about.
they
I think
announced
that like
convergence before they even had devices.
yeah. Well, look, go and just read their articles where it's like true convergence, not this stuff you've been seeing. It's like okay, purism, if you say so. Um, but anyway, so I mean, I've tried to make do with what's out there, um, and and I do think Chrome OS was a fairly compelling option if it were to run on better hardware. Unfortunately, better hardware means expensive hardware, and that's the other part of this is that I don't think I should have to spend $1,000 or more to get a decent piece of hardware. Because again, I'm not looking to have a full laptop, workstation style experience. I understand it's a low power device, and I'm willing to have it not be hugely performant. I just need it to be performant enough to actually use and not literally be so slow that it's painful.
Yeah, I
So,
note looking at all the Android tablets out there that you either pay $1,000 for a tablet or you get a tablet that's
You get
still
a
running
Tinker
like
Toy.
Android 8. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
they
and
don't
and
they don't like putting newer processors in tablets. I don't get it.
Now,
well, so I
I,
did get the. Go ahead, Joe.
I know that on our Saturday show we did point out a couple of really good devices, and we had some listeners also point out some other ones. The Mix, I'm not sure what was
Yeah, Lenovo Mix, I think.
that the listener pointed out, and then
No, not Lenovo. Was it Lenovo? I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, I think it might have
I
been
think
the
it was.
Lenovo Mix. But then I had pointed out a couple of other Dell products, the Dell Latitude tablets and the Dell Venue Pro 11. And we got into the specific models at the time, but I don't remember the model numbers. And I was just pointing out the I series and the M series, and both of them have worked really well for me. So,
Well, let me tell you that I was on Linux Lugcast on Friday, and somebody brought up
oh, what's
that
that
new
show? I've
Star
never heard
Labs.
of it.
Oh, you've never heard of it?
Well, yeah, tell me about
Oh,
that
it's this
show.
wonderful. It's this wonderful bi-weekly first and third Friday of the month from 9 p.m. to midnight Eastern. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It's just a
there's some
bunch of
jerk on this show that talks about it every now and again.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, we don't talk about it enough, unfortunately, because
yeah.
we need
Why
people
don't
to
we
come
get back
hang
on
out.
script or we'll be chatting till midnight?
Okay. Well, anyway, the relevant point there was that someone had brought up Star Labs and they came out with a tablet that has the N200 processor in it, which is essentially a replacement for like a Celeron. New branding for it, but it's sort
the
of
N's are new branding for the Atom.
Okay, but they are an x86 processor, and they actually can run a full Linux distribution as 16 gigs of memory and 512 gigs of storage and a 12.5-inch screen and a detachable keyboard and all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm so close to just buying the thing. And I'm still not entirely convinced that I won't, but I was able to pull myself back from the edge a little bit.
Well,
But
buying a machine from UK with free shipping, that's pretty
yeah,
actionable,
yeah, big discount. It's, right around $500, and it is free shipping, and it looks like a really great machine. But at the same time, I wanted to just sort of take a breath and think about, what I was doing. So anyway, so that's really kind of where I'm at, and I'm just surprised that there isn't more choice. That it's some small company in the UK that offers a tablet that sort of meets this requirement, seemingly at least. So, if anyone has any ideas or thoughts on this, anything outside of the things that you heard us talk about or suggest,
I know Pine sells one, but I think they're selling one with
No.
the older processors and lower end processors. So
We
And
will
it's
get
not
into
a
that if we
x86
get back to the
processor.
show notes.
right.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
So, Eric, you wrote some stuff.
What did I miss?
Oh no, I got that. We
You
discussed
didn't
everything
hear
there.
anything about DeX.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the latest tablet that I got is a Samsung Galaxy Tab S8 Plus. So it's the 12-inch model, and it's running Android. And I knew that was going to be, the limiting factor, but it does run DeX. And for any of you unfamiliar with DeX, so Android, one of the most infuriating things it does is memory management and power saving. Is that it will put applications to sleep, and it does it pretty quickly. So if you're trying to multitask, in multitasking on Android, in Android mode is just split screen, maybe 3 things on the screen. So if you're actually trying to do something that requires more than those few things being in the foreground and therefore allowed to stay open, you have a hard time. Things will put themselves to, Android will put things to sleep, and then when you wake them back up, they're not in the state they were in, and you lose work, and it's really frustrating. So Samsung at least gives you DeX as an option, and what it basically does is give you a quasi desktop experience where it allows you on a tablet device specifically to have a taskbar, to have sort of a start menu sort of approach, or if you want to call it that. And the other thing that it does is it leaves applications resident in memory and allows you to have floating windows. And so it really is like using a desktop operating system, but the the one major drawback is that it's still Android, and you're still using Android apps and therefore a mobile browser. And so, it doesn't really solve my problem.
They used to have the Linux on DeX project, and if you get an old enough one, you can still use it.
Yeah, the Note 9 and the S9. But S9, no. S8. But no, it's the exact same thing on the phones. Like my Note 10 Plus will run DeX in the exact same way. And you can, switch your browser over to look at the desktop site. And I guess you could also then use like Google Docs and actually have full-fledged a word processor and things like that.
It's very good for a lot of things, right? And it does do an admirable job of again, taking what is a pretty anemic multitasking experience on Android and turning it into something that is much better. But even in desktop view mode, which is really just more about how it's representing the page, you still, again, you don't have developer tools the way you would on a full browser. You don't have just some of the things that you would really want to have if you're doing any sort of website development, and really just relying on Android specific applications. It just doesn't give you, it doesn't give me, at least, maybe some people that is good enough, but yeah, for me, it's really not. So that's in my mind. I'm thinking, okay, well, I could sell this tablet for the majority of what the Star Labs Starlight tablet would cost, and replace it with that. So that's a potential. I'm not sure. Still sort of chewing on that. So anyway, the search continues, and will I ever actually be really happy? I'm not entirely convinced. So.
Okay, well, let's talk about Linux phones. The first thing on the list is always the Librem 5. The Librem 5 is a smartphone manufactured by Purism that is part of their Librem line of products. The phone is designed with the goal of using free software whenever possible. It includes PureOS, a Linux operating system by default, and as of 2021 is the only smartphone recommended by the Free Software Foundation. Like other Librem products, the Librem 5 focuses on privacy and freedom and includes features like hardware kill switches and easily replaceable components. Its name with a numerical 5 refers to its screen size and not a release version. After an announcement on August 24th of August 2017, the distribution of developer kits and limited pre-release models occurred through 2019 and most of 2020. The first mass production version of the Librem 5 was shipped on 18th of November 2020. On November 18th of 2020, Purism announced via press release that they had begun shipping the finished version of the Librem 5, known as Evergreen. Following its release in December 2020, Purism announced that they will offer a Librem 5 USA version of the phone for the price of $1,999, which is assembled in the United States for extra supply chain security. According to Purism CEO Todd Weaver, quote, having a secure, auditable, U.S.-based supply chain, including parts procurement, fabrication, testing, assembly, and fulfillment, all from within the same facility, is the best possible security story, end quote. In place of an integrated mobile SoC found in most smartphones, the Librem 5 uses 6 separate chips: i.MX8M Quad, Silicon Labs RS9116, Broadmobi BM818, Gemalto PLS8, ST Microelectronics TCO Liv3F, Wolfson Microelectronics WM8962, and Texas Instruments BQ25895. The downside to having dedicated chips instead of an integrated system on chip is that it takes more energy to operate separate chips, and the phone's circuit boards are much larger. On the other hand, using separate components means longer support from the manufacturers than with mobile SoCs, which have short support timelines. According to Purism, the Librem 5 is designed to avoid planned obsolescence and will receive lifetime software updates. The Librem 5 is the first phone to contain a smart card reader where an open PGP card can be inserted for secure cryptographic operations. Purism plans to use open PGP cards to implement storage of GPG keys, disk unlocking, secure authentication, a local password vault, protection of sensitive files, user persons, and travel persons. To promote better security, all the source code in the root file system is free and open source software and can be reviewed by the user. Purism publishes the schematics of the Librem 5's printed circuit boards under the GPL 3.0 Plus license and publishes x-rays of the phone so that the user can verify that there haven't been any changes to the hardware, such as inserted spy chips. The Librem 5 ships with Purism's PureOS, a Debian GNU Linux derivative. The operating system uses a new mobile user interface developed by Purism called Phosh, a portmanteau from Phone Shell. It is based on Wayland, WL Roots, GTK3, and GNOME. Unlike other mobile Linux interfaces such as Ubuntu Touch and KDE Plasma Mobile, Phosh is based on tight integration with the desktop Linux software stack, which Purism developers believe will make it easier to maintain in the long term and incorporate it into existing desktop Linux distributions. Phosh has been packaged in a number of desktop distros, Debian, Arch, Manjaro, Fedora, and OpenSUSE, and is used by 8 of the 16 Linux ports for the PinePhone. The phone is a convergence device. If connected to a keyboard, monitor, and mouse, it can run Linux applications as a desktop computer would. Many desktop Linux applications can be run on the phone as well, albeit possibly without a touch-friendly UI. Any comments on that?
Phosh sucks. You want me to run this next part here for you?
You can do that.
All right. The PinePhone and the PinePhone Pro. I do have a PinePhone still. Thank you to the listener that sent that to me. The PinePhone Pro is powered by a Rockchip Hexacore SoC operating at 1.5 gigahertz and ships paired with 4 gigabytes of dual-channel LP DDR4 RAM, as well as 128 gigs of internal eMMC flash storage. It features a high-fidelity 13 megapixel main camera, a sensor, and a 5 megapixel front-facing camera. Pine64 worked closely with Rockchip's engineering team to fine-tune the system on a chip's performance so it meets the necessary thermal and battery consumption envelopes. The result of this cooperation is the RK3399S, a RK3399 variant made specifically for the PinePhone Pro. Rockchip's team was also instrumental in enabling the PinePhone Pro's suspend state, which allows the smartphone to receive calls and SMS messages while preserving battery. Hardware privacy dip switches for the cameras, the microphone, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth headphone jack, enabling UART, and the LTE modem, including GPS, are accessible under the back cover just as on the original PinePhone. The PinePhone Pro features a vibrant in-cell IPS display covered with Corning Gorilla Glass 4 with an oleophobic coating, offering superior scratch resistance and image clarity. The camera is covered by Corning Gorilla Glass 4 and protected by an elevated bezel, similar to the one found on the original PinePhone. The chassis is slightly thicker, roughly 2 millimeters, than the original PinePhone's. Proportions of the original design were altered to accommodate the new display and to allow for improved heat dissipation. The coating on the back of the PinePhone Pro has been given a premium feel and engineered to minimize oily fingerprints. We think you'll be pleased with the end result. Openness means privacy and security as well as software choice. Just as the original PinePhone, the PinePhone Pro runs mainline Linux with patches which are being upstreamed with open source drivers. The default operating system for the PinePhone Pro is Manjaro Linux with KDE Plasma Mobile, but we expect to see it supported by most of the operating systems already available for the original PinePhone. It is also likely that the PinePhone Pro will give rise to new software options. We cannot wait to see what the community comes up with. And now I'm going to stop right there for just a second and say, Manjaro. I really enjoyed that on the PinePhone. Basically, you can run whatever Linux runs using Manjaro on that phone. So desktop application, install it. There might be some scaling issues, but it works. Now, I still would not recommend it as a daily driver. If you depend on proprietary mainstream mobile messenger applications, banking applications, use loyalty or travel apps, consume DRM media, or play mobile video games on your Fruit or Android smartphone, then the PinePhone Pro is likely not for you. Tasks such as opening applications, browsing the internet, interacting with the user interface, or watching videos are on par with recent mid-range Android devices. Many of you will also be happy to hear that the native Linux games as well as popular retro game emulators work great on the PinePhone Pro. Be it Super Tux Kart, PSP, or Dreamcast emulation, you'll be in for a treat. When docked and connected to an external monitor and keyboard and mouse, the PinePhone Pro performs well when surfing the web, using the terminal or an office suite, watching 1080p videos, and even in light photo editing. The perfect pocketable Linux computer on the go. Now I will have to try that, hooking it up with everything and seeing
Still
how
in development, of course.
yeah, seeing how well it works on an external monitor as like a really lightweight desktop.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Pine phone definitely I cannot call it a daily driver, but it is something that I have had fun messing around with, and I will go back to every now and again and
Well,
mess
but you
around
had
with it
the
more.
original version too, not the
Yeah,
Pro.
yeah, but even then, I don't see how the software could have improved enough. Maybe as a daily driver, but I don't know.
I
Um,
think part of the problem is that the smartphone has become so ubiquitous that, the idea of they mentioned the proprietary mainstream mobile messenger applications. So, okay, maybe I can live without that, but there are companies I do business with that make you authenticate via your smartphone, or
right.
are just easier to use on the app than they are on their website. There are, and that is just sort of the state of the world now. Is that there is this assumption that you have a smartphone that can do these things, and that's just something I think that until we can really crack that, people are going to have to be willing to have two different devices.
Yeah, because like you were mentioning, the two-factor authentication apps,
Yeah.
they aren't really made to run on Linux. They're made to run on Android, or they're made to run on Apple, and yeah, you're just not going to get it on Linux.
Yeah. Yep. I was working for a company that was using, um, and you had to have an app on your phone. You couldn't do it on the computer uh, in order to get the code to authenticate to their, I think it was like Active Directory or something like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know of any way around that.
Well, I also have a YubiKey, which works for some of it, but there are some times when I just absolutely have to have the Android application.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, I hope they keep pushing. This is something that, just like the choice with browsers we talked about earlier with Firefox, I feel like this is something that we've sort of been rammed into this uh, two party system where we just don't have any real choice outside of that. And I would love to see someone else break through there and give
yeah,
us another
and
choice.
I have always tried to various workarounds to get Linux working on my mobile devices in some kind of way, whether that be like with a VM. I've done some really horrible Linux VMs on some Android devices, and like even the modern ones. I think the most recent issues that I had with modern VMs on, my Note 10 Plus, which has 12 gigs of RAM, so that really wasn't any kind of stopping point there, and a really decent processor. It got to be that the version of Linux that you were installing, the only user that it provided was root, so it was really like half an operating system, and
Yeah.
you could create a user, and then you'd have to jump through all these other hoops, and then things still only kind of worked. Like you can't run VLC as root, so
Right.
yeah, there were some pretty big issues there, and I just never could get it working right in any way that wasn't completely annoying. But in the stuff I mentioned, I was talking because I've been talking about using Chrome Remote Desktop from like my office to access my home computer while using Samsung DeX, and that makes it look like I'm just plain running Linux, especially
Yeah.
on a high-end network and having the really low latency. But I haven't done it for like 2 weeks now because I've been super busy. And then yesterday I wanted to test it out on some lower end Android devices to see how well you can make those work as like a thin client. Because Chrome Remote Desktop and VNC are your only two choices, and I've never really liked VNC, but I'll get to that some more in just a minute. And for some reason, multiple computers that I've tested it out on, I cannot get Chrome Remote Desktop to go online for any of my devices. Like the server devices, that they get listed as devices that I have connected to Chrome Remote Desktop, But then I tell them to go online, I enter the PIN, and they still list as offline. And I've gone through the process multiple times, and I cannot get anything turned on and accessible from Chrome Remote Desktop anymore, which it really kind of sucks. I really wanted to test out those devices. So, and it did work out pretty well when I was using it before. But since it didn't work, I decided to go to the old standby of VNC. So, well, I'll never use real VNC again because they've gone to a paid model and basically you can't do anything with them. Yeah. So I switched to Tight VNC. And I tried out Tight VNC. You know, I got it installed on my computer, and then I got the VNC viewer installed on my phone. I was trying it out on my phone before I switched to the other devices, and all I could get to show up is gray screens. So I don't know what the issue is. I gotta find I know that there are a couple other applications out there that'll let you do it, probably like TeamViewer or something like that. But I'm not a big fan of supporting TeamViewer because of what it gets used for, which is usually, you know, there's a lot of scams that run off of TeamViewer against older people. Now, that's nothing against TeamViewer. That's something completely against the scammers. But I just still don't feel comfortable trying to put that into my workflow.
Yeah, I've got a couple things. AnyDesk is a decent alternative to TeamViewer and others. They have reasonable licensing fees if you do want to buy it, but it's free for personal use, and it works on mobile devices as well as desktop operating systems. I've also been playing with Tailscale, which is sort of a distributed VPN system, and that allows for connectivity between your devices when you're remote. And then once you have that connectivity, then you can use different, you know, VNCs or things like that. I've used, it's a game streaming specifically. It's called Moonlight and Sunlight. Sunlight's the server, Moonlight is the receiver, and but it also allows you to do a remote desktop session. And so I've used that combination over Tailscale, and it works really well. So I think there are some other options, but you're right. I think maybe just connecting almost like thin client style to a more capable desktop operating system somewhere being hosted somewhere else might be an alternative as well. So I have to kind of dig in that a little bit and see if that might work.
Well, I would love it if X2Go had an Android client, but yeah, that I've been barking up that tree for almost a decade now, and I don't know how much longer X2Go is going to be useful unless they, you know, get a Wayland to go type of thing. So, yeah.
Well, sadly, that is about all there is in real Linux on phones. I'm still of the opinion that we should wait another episode to talk about the rest of this. No one has supported me on that.
No, hold on. Where are we at? we're at the hour and a half mark. To make it for a relatively short show.
I'm happy with that.
And then I'm okay with doing the rest of this on another show.
Yeah, there. If you start scrolling, it's four more pages.
Yeah, that's plenty enough for another show.
Yeah, let's. I'm with you. I think this is good.
Okay. Well, in which case, that's our innards. Take it, Joe.
Oh, okay. Moving on to vibrations from the ether, and there is nothing. Nothing.
You people don't love us anymore.
Right.
You just send letters and emails and all kinds of long chats in our Discord. And
maybe I'll annoy some people and they'll write in to say, please don't let this guy
right
stay.
You'll be welcome back anytime you want to be here. They don't have anything to say about that.
No, but we love hearing people's opinions. We love, give us show ideas, because there are some times where we just run out of ideas.
Yeah.
And
I also know that there are a lot of people out there that have different situations where they're, doing things like we're doing. And if anything we've talked about here, if you have sort of feedback, I mean, that's why I'm on the show, because I always felt like I had some kind of comment to make. If you have any ideas about mobile devices that we talked about, or anything else in the news, or just, we would love to hear it.
You just wanted to be able to say "shut up, Moss" to my face.
Not on the show.
Okay, moving on. Check this out. We have one item in Check This Out this week. We should probably start putting some more in there on our own. Now, my wife shared with me a really cool video from, I believe it was CNN. And I enjoyed watching it. Sadly, I put the link in there wrong, so it's showing up as a Facebook link. I'll have to probably correct that later. But it is from CNN, and it's UK or Ukraine drone training. Now they actually go into showing that they're putting together their own drones using PCBs and soldering it all together, and the training that they go through, and a lot of women helping out since they don't want to put women on the front line, and guys helping out, and just the women training the men and all that jazz. And it's just really cool what they're doing with drones, and teaching people how to drop bombs with drones. Yes, I know that's a little bit scary, but it's the future probably of warfare. And it's interesting how much of what they're doing in Ukraine is DIY. I do recommend it, and maybe find some more information elsewhere, and just see what they're doing.
Well, this is relevant because I read today that there was actually an attack by Russia using 25 drones, and Ukraine was able to shoot down 22 of them.
Oh,
that's because Russia is buying their drones from Iran.
Well, whatever the case is, I certainly hope that Ukraine continues forward. And it does look like, just from watching this, they're using a lot of sort of off-the-shelf technology, and yeah, that's great.
They're building it with what they have, so yeah. I mean, I think that's
You'll get
awesome.
a slava Ukraine from me. Yep.
I mean, I was almost convinced to go and volunteer for their drone program there. Go there with a soldering iron and a controller, and just go for it.
But you can't get enough Pi Zero W2s.
Well, right, but I can get the Zero Ws.
Oh, you could probably just use an Arduino.
Maybe. I'd have to think about that one. Or no, the Pico. Pico's got a bit more processing power. Okay, moving on. Housekeeping and announcements.
You want me to do this?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see something you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube, post at the mintCast subreddit, chat with us on Telegram and Discord, or post directly at https://mintcast.org. Our next episode is 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Sunday, September 17th, 2023. And you can get that converted to your time zone with the link in the show notes. Next roundtable live stream, 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, September 9th, 2023. And there's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Next roundtable live stream, 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, September 23rd, 2023. And there's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. All live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. And that's the end of the show. For the wrap up, I've been Joe, and if you like the sound of my voice, you can catch me on a couple other podcasts. That's the Linux Link Tech Show, TLLTS.org, Linux Lugcast, linuxlugcast.com. You can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org, or you can buy me a coffee at Ko-fi, and. Moss, how about you?
Well, I'm still Moss, and I have other podcasts, Full Circle Weekly News and Distro Hoppers Digest. You can email me at bardmoss@pm.me. I'm on Mastodon as @Zyvala@hosttux.social, and my other contact information can be found at itsmoss.com. Bill's not here. You can catch him, Bill, at mintcast.org, Bill_H on Discord, at WCHauser3 at fostodon.org on Mastodon, at WCHauser3 on Twitter, and WCHauser3 on Facebook. Also check out his other podcasts, Linux OTC and 3 Fat Truckers. There are links in the show notes.
Majid also couldn't make it today. He had to work. Or no, his daughter had a thing. You can email him directly, drmajid at mintcast.org, at Atypical Doctor on Twitter, Atypical Anesthetist on Instagram, and the Atypical Anesthetist podcast on Spotify. Eric, where can we find you?
He says anesthetist.
Anesthetist.
Well, he is British, so, you know.
He's allowed
I'm
to
on
be
most...
wrong.
That's right. Well, yeah, I've got a whole theory on that. Anyway, most social media outlets, I'm on the services, although I did just get off of X/Twitter. I'm done with that.
Woohoo.
But you can find me as Eric Adams. Please note that I am not the mayor of New York City, just in case there's any confusion. Also, I can be reached by email as of today at eric@mintcast.org. In addition to mintcast, I'm also a part of Distro Hoppers Digest, as well as the Linux Saloon Stream and Linux Slugcast.
Okay, before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintcast possible. Someone, probably Bill, for our audio editing, archive.org for hosting our audio files, Hobstar for our logo, and InitRD for the animated Discord logo, Londoner for our time syncs and various other contributions, including most of the news, Bill Hauser for hosting the server which runs our website maintenance, and the Nextcloud server on which we host our show notes and raw audio. And last but not least, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
And
Thank you, Clem.
And that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
It's not a fap.
That's something else entirely.
Yeah, that is definitely not it.
Okay, export audio. I got mine. Is it going to the right place? No.
420. Oh, we should have had an episode on legalizing marijuana.
Yeah, we should call this episode Up in Smoke or something, you know.
All right, so we have a topic for next time, too, which is kind of awesome. And that's all open source Android.
Yeah. Let's see, files.
Maybe we want to toss Chrome OS in there, too.
Well, it's basically the same thing, just Linux only with a microkernel developed by Google.
Right, which is why I was saying.
mintCast, show audio. We do have a 420. Now, yes, that got done. I'll close that, save it. And now I will upload something. Upload file.
I should stop the stream.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
We enjoyed your company.